I just think it's a big mistake that people don't spend time on their routine. I mean, look at Kai Green. I mean, people will never forget those routines he did. Melvin Anthony. I mean,
yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you're
Vince
right.
Taylor.
It has an impact. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That
yeah, no, I know you are, but I'm just saying.
No,
I understand. You shouldn't have to be rewarded. It's like my kids not wanting to, pick up their dirty laundry because I'm not giving them money to do it. They should just want to do it because they want to be, because they know long term, if I pick up my dirty laundry and put it in the hamper, mommy's going to be happy, and maybe when we go to Target, she'll buy me a toy. You know what I mean? You got to think long term, benefits rather than what am I getting immediately? Oh, you're not going to give me $5? I'm not picking it up then. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. And we are back for another exciting episode of Heavy Muscle Radio on this July 17th, 2023 evening. And I'm joined as always by the technician, Chris Aceto. And Chris, I'm on my last day of IV antibiotics.
Oh, well, just to reiterate what happened last time is, so I can say to Bob listening that you're always right, is Dave, for people not listening week to week, when he had to go into the hospital and had they put him on antibiotics. Yeah. Dave called me and said, I hope they gave me enough. It just seems like it's not quite enough. And I said to you, well, did you tell him that? And what did you say?
Of course I did. They don't listen.
And then 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, well, it's not even 3 weeks later, whatever, they had to send him back, not enough antibiotics.
You know what's unnerving for me? Because, when you first have something happen to you health-wise, you become nervous and you basically, you resign yourself to the experts, right, at the hospital. And,
Yeah.
I have a lot of knowledge, but what do I really know about infectious diseases? I mean, in terms of and heart surgeries. But, I have a basic understanding. But what I start doing is I start doing research. And I start breaking it down and realizing it's really not that complex. When they put a tube down your throat to breathe, okay, for a surgery, they pull it out when the surgery's over. When they do it for a heart surgery, they leave it in there a lot of times. Mine was left in for 24 hours, which introduces bacteria into the lungs, whatever's on that breathing tube. And unfortunately, in the hospital, there's a lot of Pseudomonas bacteria, which is a nasty pain in the ass bug, as Bleckman would say. The bugs, bacteria. So when I left the hospital after this heart surgery and everything like that, I felt great, but evidently there was some bacteria in my lungs. 8 weeks after the surgery, I go back to the hospital with pneumonia. Now I didn't really, my symptoms were basically when I would take deep breaths, I would feel like, some rib pain, and I really wasn't, like the typical pneumonia patient. I had a fever, obviously, and when they treat you, I'm talking to infectious diseases, and she comes down and she's like, they don't even know what's causing it. They think they think I picked it up when I came to the hospital, that I had a cold, and then they have the worst scenarios of all time. So they're like, all right, we're going to treat you. I said, you sure a week is enough on the antibiotics? Because I did some reading, and I know that a lot of times they'll go 2 weeks. I said, because this thing, I think this thing has been in me for 8 weeks since my original cardiac surgery on my aorta. And so that would probably mean it's probably, festered down and hiding in there in my lungs. No. It's protocol's a week. Fine. 4 weeks after I leave the hospital, I felt great after I did the week of antibiotics. 4 weeks later, symptoms come back. Of course, they never got the whole thing. And the worst thing you can do with bacteria is that you could not get the whole thing, because whatever's left now can sometimes become resistant to the bacteria they're giving you.
Roads, yeah.
Thank God mine wasn't. So they put me on 2 weeks. But the thing is, and finally I got the infectious disease doctor, this Indian woman, to admit that my scenario was probably right, that I got it at the heart surgery. I got a dose of it. They didn't get it. It came back. So all these hospitalizations were completely avoidable. If they would have just given me some prophylactic antibiotics, knowing they're going to stick a breathing tube down your throat for 24 hours. Hey, you know what? He had the tube down his throat. Rather than wait for the infection to happen, why don't we just give him a week's worth of antibiotics while we're in the hospital?
Did they give you free follow-up visits at the hospital and free charges?
Yeah,
See if they screwed up. Because if it was one of my Airbnb, Dave, if it was one of my Airbnbs and the water
want a free night.
Not quite enough, they'd want a full year free.
Oh, full year free. Oh, there you go.
That's not, yeah.
I'm you know what, the antibiotics that they sent me home with, it, which they delivered to my house, and they'd hook it, you hook them up 3 times a day. I don't even want to know what that bill is. It's probably insanely ridiculous because the infusion, the nursing, they have this home health nursing that will come and service, they change the bandages and they take the temperature, they'll draw blood on you. There was nothing available when I left the hospital. Of all the nursing places, there was not one available. So the infusion company itself, since they already knew me, decided we'll send our nurses to take care of you. It was really this woman who I put on a diet. gave her some nutritionals. I had to bribe the infusion company because they weren't going to send me home. They wanted me to go to some kind of rehab place to do the antibiotics. Look, I can do these antibiotics myself. So the day I get home, the 16 home nursing places called me. I didn't even know what was going on. They're like, "We're coming tomorrow." I'm like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
We heard you needed a nurse. I said, "Well, I needed nursing yesterday when they wouldn't let me out of the hospital." I said, "I didn't need it today. I got taken care of." So
they wanted to send you, Dave. They wanted to send you to the rehab place because that's where they'd make the money if they sent you out there.
I should have gone there. It would have been like hanging out with my father for a week in there.
RFK would say that the lobbyists got a hold of your doctors and they want to send you to the rehab place to break your wallet.
Right, exactly. So anyway, to make a long story short, as Jimmy the Bull would say, I have one more day of antibiotics, and then tomorrow.
Your energy is good.
Energy's good. My energy, Chris, when I left the hospital, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, the gym is next door to the hospital. I went to the gym. Like when I left, I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. Right? I just went right to the gym. They're like, "You went to the gym with the IV line in?" I said, "Yeah, I've been working out every day with it in there." I said, "Isn't the idea that you put a longer line in there so it doesn't get pulled out?" They're like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then why can't I work out?"
Yeah.
Because they don't understand that. I'm a different creature. We're bodybuilders are different creatures. We don't let little things like that bother us. I know people that they get like a little pull in the hamstring and they take 6 weeks off from the gym. Yeah, I know other people, they pull a hamstring, they're in the gym the next day.
Doing hamstrings.
Yeah.
Serge Nubray would say, work it out. Bring blood. Do 100 sets to bring so much blood into the area that it has to rehab itself.
I'll tell you, I had some pain in the ass injuries, not like really mind boggling, but you pull a quad or you pull I tore a groin muscle once and doing a split, on stage. And you know what? Going to the gym and training through those injuries was a nightmare. They were so painful and the stretching. But you know what? If you don't do your therapy, what happens is you lose your range of motion. And so, like if you pull, like you ever do a bench press and you feel like your pec muscle separating a little bit, but you catch it before it really goes all the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and then it heals. But like 2 days later, it's super tight. Now, if you don't get in there and get deep tissue massage and stretch it, you'll lose the range of motion of that muscle. It'll always be scarred over and it'll never like stretch properly. And so it's very important that you work through injuries. It doesn't mean to do stupid things where you're going to, because the typical bodybuilder move, right? You hurt yourself. What do? You go and try to do another set to see how bad it is, right, Chris? And then you make it worse.
I didn't know you said you did splits, Dave. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. I was in 2002. I was doing this whole guest posing. I designed this guest posing routine with Colette, who I was dating at the time. It was like a James Bond routine. And I would go down into a split at the end and hit a double bicep pose. I was very flexible. And the first stop on the tour, because it was 25 guest posings in a row. It was like one week off or something. I don't even know how I booked them all. It was just worked out well, timing wise. And the first stop on the tour, the stage had oil on it, and I slipped. And as I was doing the split, my legs went out, and I tore like a groin muscle. And man, was that annoying. It didn't really stop me from training. It was a really annoying. It was all tons of blood. And one of the things I could tell people is if you ever tear or pull something in your upper leg, wear compression stockings on that leg. Seriously, for like 6 weeks afterwards, because what happens is all the dead blood and all the dead, whatever's trapped goes down by gravity.
Yeah.
If you get like dead blood and accumulating in your calf area or your ankle, it leads to what they call like a stasis like infection. So in other words, just because the blood's not moving and it's all that dead blood, you can get an infection, even though you're not doing anything that you would warrant an infection. It's just because the blood is stagnant there, and it's a nightmare to get rid of. And I remember I think I had to do IV antibiotics. I think I was doing my own. I think I was just taking shot. They gave me like it was like it was one of these cephalosporins, but it was like an injection, because I literally the oral antibiotics were not getting rid of this infection. But the thing that really cured me is when I put the compression stock on and it moved all that fluid out of there. Now my circulation restored itself. So I tell guys all the time, because people pull quad muscles, hamstring muscles, groin muscles all the time, but put the compression stock on and wear it all the time, because that will keep the blood from accumulating in your lower leg and having problems. And another one of those freaky things that I had, Chris, it was like weeks and weeks I could not get rid of this infection. It was like, I can't believe it. I got an infection from tearing a muscle. It was the stupidest thing of all time, but it was reality. And you know what? After it was over, I said to myself, now I could advise other people so that they don't have to go through the same thing. If you tear a muscle or you have some kind of injury, contusion to your leg, always wear compression socks, especially as bodybuilders, because we're so big and heavy that fluid tends to accumulate in our ankles and calf area.
Yeah. So you were doing the split front double bicep before Flex Wheeler and Andrew Jack.
No, I don't think so. I think Flex had me. I think he beat me.
Flex is the originator, I think.
Yeah, I stole it. I stole the move from him. Didn't look as good when I did it, because my legs are like longer than my upper body. It was impressive nonetheless, just to see someone my size do it. I guess it's funny. I was on the Dennis James podcast the other day. Dennis asked me to come on, and it was him, Dennis Newman, Chris Cormier, and who else was on there? Dennis Newman, Chris Cormier, and Milos. Now Milos is going to get insulted. I also just interviewed Milos about Gustavo Bedell, which we'll talk about in a minute. And what was the point of my
about
Chris Cormier? We were talking about posing routines and how some people. I said there's two types of posers out there, because Cormier was saying how no one spends any time on their routine anymore, and I said, yeah, it's a shame, because I said I don't have a physique that can pose to slow, beautiful music like Milos and Chris Cormier could. I said I knew that my physique was a power physique, but I wanted to entertain the audience, so I always try to do funny routines or routines that would get the audience into what I'm doing. Use theme musics and stuff like that. And Chris Cormier was like, I still remember your Hulk routine where you bug your eyes out. And, there was a routine where the Hulk movie had just come out, and the whole thing was, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry type of thing. And, I kind of did the whole acted out this whole little thing and turned into the Incredible Hulk.
Found that out firsthand, but go ahead.
Yeah. So Cormier still remembers that routine. And a lot of people remember that routine. And I said, you know what? I wasn't a great poser, but if I can make you remember the routine that I did, and think about it, you hear music on the radio comes on, you say, oh, Sean Ray posted that song, or Flex posted that song, or Mike Francois posted it, Milos posted it. You know people's routines because they had their own stereotypical moves that they did, and you can relate it to that. Vince Taylor, Kamali, all the, you know, really good posers and entertaining posers, Kai. So I said, you know, as a bodybuilder, you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't figure out a way to entertain the audience, whether it be because your posing is so incredible like Melvin Anthony and you can move on stage, or you're just a massively thick guy that you can do something that people will remember you. And, you know, and Cormier is really upset that they don't judge the posing round anymore, and Milos is too. And so it's, you know, it's interesting, but, you know, you really can make a mark and have people remember you if you do something unique. And so I always tell people, be creative. You know what I mean? Don't just do things, oh, you know what, they're not judging the routine, I'm just going to kind of do some stupid song that everyone else is doing, and I'll just, you know, flub my way through it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, if it's a non-judged round, don't expect to have people put effort into it. You know, it just,
you should take pride in what you do, because you spend so much time, you know, working on, you know, this,
you know, you're 100% right, Dave. You should take pride, but at the same time, if it's not evaluated other than by the audience, and your focus is like, you know, as a bodybuilder at the Olympia level, is I just got to be as big as I can and as ripped as I can and holding as little water as I can. And you know that, you know, that's the whole, you know, the whole thing. Then how much effort are you going to really put into the routine?
That's not the whole thing, Chris, because your validation as a bodybuilder is going to be how the fans perceive you. I never got a pro card, right? And I never won the nationals of the USA or the North American, but people remember me. And so
You know,
I had to make myself memorable by doing things that would draw people's attention to my physique, whether it be in a positive or a negative light. There are people who just don't like my physique, and they still remember me, you know. And so, and they're still talking about me to this day, whether it be because they hated my physique or they love my physique. And so I did something that evoked some sort of emotional response from the crowd. And I think it's if you're going to spend so much time on bodybuilding and take the drugs and dedicate your life to it, to leave out the posing round just because it's not scored is ridiculous. It's like the equivalent of, you know what, I'm a bodybuilder, but, and you know what, I could coach people and make $100,000 a year, but you know what, I don't want to exert that extra effort, even though I already have what it takes to be a coach, and I know what I'm talking about. I'm just a little too lazy. It's not really being scored on the bodybuilding judging stage. So I'm going to ignore that fact. You'd be an idiot. This is what you do. You're in the gym. People want to hire you because they want to know how you look the way you did. You might as well, you know, make some extra money on the side, especially if you don't have a real job or you don't have an endorsement contract or something like that. So I just think it's a big mistake that people don't spend time on their routine. I mean, look at Kai Green. I mean, people will never forget those routines he did. Melvin Anthony. I mean,
yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you're right. It has an impact. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That
yeah, no, I know you are, but I'm just saying. No, I understand. You shouldn't have to be rewarded. It's like my kids not wanting to, you know, pick up their dirty laundry because I'm not giving them money to do it. You know, they should just want to do it because they want to be, because they know long term, if I pick up my dirty laundry and put it in the hamper, mommy's going to be happy, and maybe when we go to Target, she'll buy me a toy. You know what I mean? You got to think long term, you know, benefits rather than what am I getting immediately. Oh, you're not going to give me $5? I'm not picking it up then. You know, that's you know, that's very short sighted thinking. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. Don't think short term. Hey, if I don't need to do this routine, it's not being judged anyway. What if I do spend a lot of time and do something impactful emotionally? People are going to remember that for 20 years, you know, 30 years.
Yeah. You should come up, Dave, with a show. You can get Cormier on it, Melvin Anthony.
Yeah.
Throw in Dennis James.
Yeah.
I say Cormier, Milos, and Lee Labrada.
Yeah.
And maybe Haney or whatever, or just take a poll and try to come up with like the top 10 routines ever.
Right. And Haney wasn't a beautiful poser. But everyone remembers that Excalibur routine he did, right?
Yeah, well, he never went down on the floor, Dave. He said big man should never go down and do any lunging poses. He was a very, you know, Haney had his own style, and
yeah,
you know, everyone back then, you know, had a great routine because the routine was you know, heavily judged.
Right. Well, we don't even know if it was heavily judged. We just know that.
Well, it was. I mean, it was considered it was considered to be judged. Whether
they told people it was judged, even if it wasn't judged, right? I think just people had more pride. I think people knew that if I do a good routine, I might get hired for guest posing jobs, which you don't see as much, obviously, these days. And the reason why you don't see a lot of guest posers out there is because these shows last so long. A lot of the promoters don't even want to have a guest poser because it's too long. Michelle, plus
you know who partially changed. You probably get this right. Who partially changed posing, even though he did it incredibly well. The effects of his routine had a negative on bodybuilding routines. Matarazzo.
Yeah, it probably did.
Because Mike's routine was so entertaining because no one had seen anything like it before. Not all he did. When he was on the money, like came in at his best, he would hit a front double, most muscular, stick his tongue out like Gene Simmons, which no one had seen before. Now
I know.
Females do it. And he would walk from side to side and point to the audience. And no one had ever seen that before. You know what I mean?
Oh, because he was a tough guy. So that worked for him. But then everyone tried to copy him, and it just looks ridiculous when other people do it because they don't look like him.
Yeah. His nephew, I sent you a video of his nephew doing men's physique.
Yeah.
The tough guy on Instagram. No, but Mike did that routine and it worked really well, and he got the crowd going nuts, and nobody had just seen like the tough. It was like, you're right, Dave. You summed it up. It was like a tough guy routine, and he waved on the crowd. And now people do it, but it's just to emulate him.
It doesn't look the same.
Even though they don't even know who they're emulating anymore because they don't know where it originated from. But it worked for him, and it didn't work really well for other people following.
It worked terrible because what happens, it looks like people are begging for applause. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And no one wants to see anyone beg for applause,
And Mike was the only person, Dave, Mike was the only person on the back double who could point to his calves.
He had good
right?
calves.
He would point
He had the freakiest calves of all time. Yeah, I think. They weren't maybe the biggest, but they were the freakiest, right?
I don't know. They might have been the biggest. They were perfect diamonds, and they looked like 100% implants. Tell Cormier they looked Jimmy before Cormier had come up with the word Jimmy.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull him up here. Hold on 1 second. Jimmy before they were Jimmy. That's a good one.
Mike's routine was a little bit. It was showmanship. It was like a little WWE.
There's his calves.
That's when he was small. When he won the USA, he was small that year. But he was really
good.
That was the year Davey came out to LA and he said, "I'm winning the USA," and he was so fat. I'm like, this guy's lost his mind.
This was free. Remember, he beat Flex Wheeler was supposed to win the USA in '91, and then Matarazzo shows up and wins it.
I think by a point, Matarazzo taunted him. They used to scream at each other at Gold's Venice. Not Wheeler, but Matarazzo used to go in and ask Flex.
Well, Matarazzo was a legitimate tough guy. He was a money. He would collect money for people, and you didn't want to mess with him. He knew how to fight. He was a boxer. And so I think I lost you, Chris.
Yeah, you did somehow. I'm here somewhere. I got to get back.
Oh. So no one wanted. So if Matarazzo called you out in the gym, these guys knew that they were going to get their ass kicked. So no one would challenge Mike, or say anything to him because they didn't want to go into the parking lot. Because back then you could actually, right? If two guys got into an argument, you go into the parking lot and you beat the shit out of each other. You can't do that anymore because now the person who got the shit beat out of him would call the police. Back then it was about men fighting. Men were real men back then.
Dave, the Matarazzo story is, keep in mind, when he won the USA, he had only competed a total number of one time.
Right.
He had only competed once. Right. And here he was, coming out to LA, and he said, I'm going to kill all these guys at the USA.
Right.
And then, which included, Cormier was, I think, fourth that year, because I prepped Cormier that year, which is why I didn't prep Mike. You're welcome, Chris. But Mike was phenomenal anyway.
Oh, you were supposed to prep Mike?
Yeah, Mike asked me. That's how but Dave, when he came to when I saw him, he was so fat. I just thought this guy won't even make anything. He was so fat.
You put all your money on Cormier.
Yeah. I hedged the bets. I did a Wall Street and hedged. So he had only competed once, and at the time I met him because I was prepping DeMeo for a few years.
Yeah. Oh,
and DeMeo never once mentioned the name Mike Matarazzo until he said something I said like your calves and your arms, but Paul, like, these arms and calves are like phenomenal. He said, well, you should see my training partner. And Paul was very, very funny. So I figured he trained with some like bantamweight, you know what I mean? And he said, no, I'm serious. The guy I train with has bigger calves than me and bigger arms than me. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. There's no one who can have, bigger calves than you and bigger arms than you. And said, yeah, sure enough, Matarazzo.
Right. He when he saw Matarazzo, he flew out to Mike's house and went and talked to his father.
Yes.
And said, this guy's got to come to California. He's going to win. He could win his pro card at the US. And they didn't even know what bodybuilding was. The parents. He's like, no, you got to give him money, and he needs money to do his supplements and all that stuff. And I'm telling you, this guy's going to make it big. And Ed was, of course, Ed was always right.
Yeah.
And
only Mike guest posed, Dave, more than you and Jay. And
he was always guest posing. Yeah.
I met him somewhere, and he couldn't stay awake for 30 seconds. And at some point he told me, I know where it was. Me, him, and Mike Katz took a limo somewhere in Laura, somewhere, to like from one airport to another. And
Right.
Matarazzo said, in 2 years, he had 82 guest poses.
I believe it.
And he took, and what's so funny, Dave? I'll just comment on this. Really important is that Mike that year, it was weird because I thought like, geez, Mike's like was better like 2 years ago as a bodybuilder. And I was thinking that in my head. And he said, you know what, Chris, I was better a couple of years ago, but I can't pass up all these, guest posings because
Money.
Yeah, the money. He said, so I just take every single one. Every single one. He says, I never say no. And you've done it, and Jay's done it, and Ronnie's done it. He said, that was one of the occasions. It was like a Sunday guest posing. He said, I did a guest posing yesterday in Buffalo or wherever he was, and today he's in Connecticut. So he did some like, Saturday and Sunday guest posings.
Yeah. Remember there used to be the Mannion's Pittsburgh championships would be on Saturday, and then Jimmy Dakotas used to hold the New England championships on Sunday all the time for years. And he would fly guys from Pittsburgh, right? I met him. He did it to me in '96. That's how I first met Jimmy, and we became friends. But he would fly me, and he would always fly Jay. Jay was out there probably more than anyone, from Pittsburgh to the New England championships on Sunday. And that was a tough double. I remember Jimmy's parents owned hotels. So as soon as they pick you up at the airport, they bring you to the hotel and they let you just sleep the whole day, and then they pick you up for the night show. It was great.
Yeah, Dakotas was a great guy. Everyone, people who don't know him, he promoted shows in New England, had that great gym, and I think Revere or near Revere.
That's where Jay used to train. Jay used to drive right to that gym.
Yeah,
I was actually at Jimmy's wedding.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I don't go to anyone's weddings, or I don't go anywhere. And I actually drove because that's how much respect I had for him. I drove from New York. I went to his up to Boston there. It was he had it right on the water there in Boston. I forget the name of the place. It was gorgeous. And I was at his wedding. I forget what year that was, but it was probably in, I'd say, 05 or something like that, or 06.
Dave, you can only figure out by what show you were prepping for. That's how you can remember what year.
Yeah.
That's the bodybuilder's life. Let's see. I was really good at that USA. I was prepping for 95.
His wife was awesome too. So. But we were doing like pose downs, like because all his friends would work out, and we were doing pose downs at the wedding. It was like a very, very it was a very lax, laid back wedding, but it was in a fancy place, but they didn't care. It was crazy. Good times. All right, let's I want to talk about Gustavo Bedell and his passing, unfortunately, because you had some interaction with him. I had Milos on the show on Friday, and Milos prepped him in 4, 05,
Yeah.
And that was probably his best years when he placed third at the Olympia and won the Ironman. So he had some interaction with Gustavo. I know. Then you explain what your interaction was, because you started working with him when he made the comeback.
No, I helped him for 2 shows. One show I helped him for, which was the Ironman, which Phil Heath won.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you helped him for that show. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look, he was just, I mean, he was absolutely phenomenal, big, dense, but he ran up against Phil, and that was one of Phil's signature looks in terms of still had the crazy midsection.
Yeah.
And then Dave, I think it was like there, that might have been the Ironman. I don't know. He came back one year natural to the Arnold. I think he got he didn't do well, but he was natural or very, very close to natural for that show. I think that was his last show.
Oh, that wasn't the year. That wasn't the year that he won. Didn't he win the Atlantic City one year too?
Yeah, he did.
Did you help him for that?
I'm talking about the year he made. The Atlantic City was still early on.
Oh, 2012, I think. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, late in his career. Late. He came back for like that one show. But I had known him simply by being around, and I had gone to Italy for Weider for like a couple of weeks, and they sent me and my wife. I said, if I'm going to Italy, I'm bringing my wife, and we went. Sure. This must have been like 2006 or something, maybe 7.
Oh. We lost Chris again.
Chris, I always gave you your first start. You didn't work for Weider. It was me. I gave you the first start with Laura.
Dave.
Yeah, you disappeared. You just came back.
Okay, so the Gustavo is. I went to Italy in 2006 or so for at least 10 days, and Weider sent me, and I went. I brought my wife, and we stayed at this little hotel, and sure enough, like I bump into in the morning breakfast in this tiny little place with Gustavo, his wife, and his kids.
Oh, that's funny.
And I'm like, God, he brought his kids. And he said to me, you have kids? I said, yeah. I said, they're home so we can have a good time. He said, oh, we'll have a good time with the kids. So he brought his very 2 young kids, and he spent the same time we did there in Italy, and we took the train from Florence to what's the place with the Venice. I did, he did, my wife, his kids, and I got to know him more there.
Personal level.
Yeah. And I say he was the Puerto Rican Gaspari, because everything out of his mouth is hard work. I work hard, and he was like a lot of bodybuilders, very dedicated to his diet. The whole time he was in Italy, he didn't miss meals, skip meals, miss workouts, any of that stuff. To be able to observe the way he interacts with his young kids, a lot of fathers interact really nicely with their kids, but you can see that he was an especially good father and husband. He had a good family unit going on, which is why they were all there together. A lot of bodybuilders would say like, oh, leaving the wife and kids at home, I'm going.
Sure.
And from an odd competitive, my first interaction with him, I learned on that trip was, I didn't know, but me and Jay had not won, I don't think, anything big yet, including amateur shows. I went down to Boston for I think it was the New England's. Yeah, New England's.
Dakotas. Dr. Jimmy Dakotas.
Yeah, it might have been the New England's, or pretty sure it was the New England's. And Richard Jones won. And me and Jay
the amateur show he won. Yeah.
There was an amateur show, and Richard Jones was a B version of Sean Ray, but he looked very Sean Ray-ish, and he was very young at the time. And I sat next to Jay, and Jay said something like, yeah, he's going to be my competition in the future. And Jay, didn't win the nationals or anything, just matter of factly like, wow, this kid's special. And he's very young. And after the show, that's all people talked about. Wow, do you see this kid, Richard Jones, like Sean Ray? You know, looks like Sean Ray, poses like Sean Ray, you know, development like Sean Ray, young like Sean Ray. And what I learned on that trip is the winner of the heavyweights was Gustavo.
Oh, that's funny. Because he was trying to get a pro card. Maybe he was trying to make a name for himself.
I don't know. I can't remember.
That was Richard Jones right there, if people don't know.
Yeah.
He could have been really great if he would have stuck with it.
It gets even better, Dave, because when I went on the tour with Jay in 2000, and it was like a rivalry. That's when the tour of 2000 was the beginning, the hardcore beginning rivalry of Jay versus Ronnie, because at that show, I told Jay, quote, I don't think Ronnie's ever going to beat you again. That's because after the 2000 Olympia, you know, at some of those shows, you could have easily had Jay winning and no one would have batted an eye. 2000 tour.
Right. But when Mr. Olympia went on that tour, they always gave them the win.
And Jay's mindset, ask him. When he heard that, he said, I'm taking the entire year off, 2000. You know, from 2000, I'm going to the Olympia next year.
Right.
But at the tour, and there were like 30 guys on the tour. There were so many people on the tour. And every show, I'd see pumping up backstage, a fat guy, and it was Gustavo. And I would say, like, God, this guy, I remember specifically saying to Jay, because he was looking at Jay and I was like, God, this guy could be really good. You know, he was really round in those shows. And he was like, I'm kidding. He wasn't fat, but he was nowhere near to be in, the type of shape to be in to crack like top 5 of that show. And the tour was really deep, deep lineup. In fact, Dennis James, who you mentioned earlier, was on that tour. And I had mentioned that to Gustavo, and Gustavo told me in Italy, he said, that's because while we were flying to places, he was taking the train.
It was cheaper.
So when I can't remember, Italy one day, Spain, 2 days later.
And because I want to stop you, sir, here. Ironically, several years prior to that, it was Ronnie Coleman who was taking the train, right, on that tour before anyone knew who he was.
That's right. So the promoters would pay for like the top 5 or 6 people, and like if you were, quote, a second or third string IFBB pro, which was Gustavo at that time, if you show up, you can compete in the show. You get your own hotel. Maybe they paid for hotel. I don't know. But at that time, they paid for like, Jay's meals, per diem, hotel, flight, transportation.
They actually would sometimes put guys together in the hotel, because I remember Kevin Levrone telling me that one year he actually had Kenny Jones as his roommate. Kenny Jones's airfare wasn't covered. So if he was in the room with Levrone, they must have.
That's crazy.
They must have made these guys bunk together. And Levrone loved it too, because Kenny's a nutcase, and so Kenny was like jumping in fountains and stuff like that. And Kevin thought it was the funniest thing of all time. Whereas most people would have thought Kenny was annoying as shit. Levrone actually enjoyed it.
Dave, what's crazy about that tour too is I was with Jay. I'll get back to Gustavo, but I was on that tour with Jay, and I thought that was 2000. And on the tour, I said, quote, I must be dying. And then I came back and I was diagnosed with cancer when I got back.
Really? Oh, that's when you had the cancer. Wow.
I was drenched I was like soaked out of my mind.
Wow.
Like, here, there, and tired, and, tired. Like,
so when you went through the whole cancer thing, you were still coaching Jay that whole time that you were?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 2001. Yeah, 2001 Olympia. I still had like drainage tubes at the prejudging for
holy mackerel.
Like when they take your lymph nodes out. Right. I was going to the show.
Were you on the interferon yet, or you hadn't started it?
No, the interferon was 6 months after, like that's the craziest time. Otherwise, good thing, because I would have. Washington Post would have done a story on me how I burnt down the prejudging venue of the 2001 Olympia, because interferon makes you certifiably 100% lose your mind, and that's why I always have in the back of my mind, Dave, like this odd respect for people who have like a nervous breakdown or lose their mind, because that happened to me, and at some point you go up to the edge and you say, God, I'm losing my mind. And then after you lose it, you don't know that you lost it anymore because you've already lost it. You have no recall on what's normal.
Thank God you didn't have any. Thank God you didn't have any kids then.
Oh,
that would have been terrible. Yeah.
But Gustavo, getting back to Gustavo, he did that tour and he got smoked in all those shows. And then, so that was 2000. And then I think 2000, 3-4 years later, 2004, he had a big breakthrough. I think he was working with Milos from 03 to 04, somewhere in that area.
Well, he had the muscle from what you and Milos both said. He just didn't have a diet. That's what Milos said. He had no idea.
He was. That's what I said when I see him backstage and thought, God, this guy's like a threat to everyone. And I was not kidding. Of course, I told him that we had the biggest laugh because I told him what color posing trunks he wore at each show.
It's a shame that we lost him. Really, I mean, I don't know exactly.
This is 2007 Olympia. I prepped him here too. 2007 Olympia.
He actually looks good here. I don't think he placed that well here, right?
No, he didn't place that well.
Why not? He looks really good.
The lineup was completely wacky. It had go through the lineup. I don't know why he didn't place.
Oh, is that the one Victor should have won? 07, yeah.
No, that was you're talking 07. Maybe this was, I don't even know. There were so many shows. His legs were a little thinner here.
They look pretty beefy to me, but
yeah, well, they were detailed. But I think the knock from the prejudging, I think if I remember. But anyhow, really, I mean, what was your interaction with him?
My interaction was really just, and I said it in my video, my tribute video. When I worked for Muscle Development, he was one of the athletes that Bleckman had on the contract. So, before shows, Bleckman would want to do these in the trenches training videos with these guys. So what would happen is someone would film footage of him training a body part, and then I would have to do an interview with them and lay the audio track over the video. It was I came up with Bill Comstock and I came up with the concept, and so Bleckman would like to do a couple of those. It was basically me interviewing him for a half hour. So I called him up and contacted him or whatever, email, and basically he didn't want to do it because he was mad at Bleckman over some he felt somehow dishonored in some way because Bleckman didn't put him on the cover he promised him, or some kooky reason. It wasn't Bleckman's fault, really. He was being completely kind of unreasonable, but he was very proud, and he was he wanted to feel respected like all the other athletes that Bleckman had under contract. So Steve had to call him up. I'm like, Steve, the only way he's going to do the interview is if you call him up and schmooze him over a little bit. So Steve called him up, I guess, and had to say, Gustavo, we think very highly of you, and we're going to put you on a cover. He had to give him the whole spiel, and then Gustavo agreed, and I did the interview, and he was very pleasant in the interview. He liked to be interviewed. He just, in his head, if he felt like it was compromising who he was, he wouldn't do something, and he was very stubborn like that. And he was at the top of his game at that point. So, you really have no choice. I remember, Bleckman was always dealing with prima donnas. These guys would be pain in the asses. And, Bleckman was paying them a lot of money every month. So for the one interview you're going to do, you don't complain about that. You just do it, But some of these guys were tough and high maintenance. I remember Bleckman used to always say, I got to get Dexter in a cab. Like Dexter hated doing photo shoots after like winning shows. So like after the Arnold, like Bleckman would have to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning, which probably means he probably didn't sleep the night before because he would take us out Saturday night after the show, celebrate, woo, drink the wine, and then he'd be up like an hour later to make sure that Dexter got into the taxi to go to the gym to do the photo shoot with Per Bedell, because if he didn't, Dexter wouldn't go,
Yeah.
He's like, I got to make sure these guys go to the photo shoot. And he wasn't lying because they wouldn't go. They wouldn't show up. I remember Cormier. I saw him at an after party at the Arnold one year. And, he used to, you remember all those years he played second?
Yes.
And I was coming back or something like that. Or I had to get up early for the airport or something like that, to go home. And Cormier was getting out of a cab. And I'm like, Chris, don't you have a photo shoot? Yeah, I just got back from the club. It was like 6 a.m. He goes, I just gonna go take a quick shower and go to the gym. He wouldn't even sleep, and if you saw the photos after, he looked amazing. You know, it was the best I'd ever seen him. So you know, that was back in nowadays. No one does photo shoots anymore. So there's nothing to even, you know, after the show's over, the show's over. Unfortunately,
right.
Yeah. So. Well, that Vancouver show was this weekend. Unfortunately, we're pre-taping the show Sunday morning, and I don't know why in the world the Vancouver Pro of all shows has a 2-day show for a pro show. I can understand putting the women on one day, the men on another day, whatever. That's great, but they actually had the pre-judging Saturday, and then I guess the finals is this afternoon. So we won't know who won, but it looks like a two-man battle. And I don't understand, Chris, why. And we talk about this all the time. It's not like a broken record. There's 6 guys in the whole show or something like that. It doesn't make sense to me that more people are not doing these shows. Vancouver, British Columbia is gorgeous this time of year. I mean, it's like you can make a vacation out of going to the show. I don't even know why people wouldn't want to do this show. Doesn't make sense to me.
You know, it's beyond puzzling. I don't know.
Every week we say the same thing too. How can there be 2 guys? Is everyone qualified for the Olympia? No one cares. How about the prize money?
I don't know what is it, but you know, it's strange that you have a pro show and there's 6 people in the lineup, because the first call has got to be the entire lineup.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just saying, what did I just say before? When Gustavo was competing on the tour, the minimum in the lineup was probably 25 guys.
I don't know
Gustavo
why.
Gustavo was paying his own train ticket to get from Spain to Italy, you know, or wherever
Look, here I look at it this way, Chris, and I take my hat off to HASSAN, Mustafa, and Stanimal Standalonga for showing up at their best here in the show. I look at it this way. Only one guy is going to win the Olympia. And realistically, there's probably 4 guys maybe that have a chance of winning the Olympia this year. Every other guy, okay, in that Olympia lineup, and everyone wants to qualify, should be doing multiple shows to, number 1, make money, number 2, become popular, because you're not going to win the Olympia, so you might as well do these shows that you have a chance of winning, so that you can say, you know what, I won a pro show. Why more guys in that top group are not, doing more shows? I don't get it. I don't Flex. Go back to Milos. Milos told me when I was interviewing him, he said, I forget what year it was, he did every show. I said, every show? He goes, well, there were only 8 that year. But I said, only 8. He did all 8 shows. But most years there were like 20, 15 shows, counting the Grand Prix tours, and Milos would do every single show.
Yeah.
So,
well, I just ran into Max Charles down at Bev's, and Max told me he did 11 last year.
Yeah, great. You got to do shows, and it helps you hone your stage experience, learn your physique. And you know what? You only have so many years to compete. You might as well take advantage, because guys like Max Charles are not going to win the Olympia. He knows he's not going to win the Olympia. He wants to get qualified for the Olympia, but he wants to win pro shows, because that's your accolade at this point. Troy Alves was a master at that. Troy knew he wasn't going to place at the Olympia, but he would win a pro show or 2 every single year that he competed. Same thing with Darren Charles.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why these more guys are not competing. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page. It's just
anyway,
very hard to have 6 people out of the show. I don't worry, but it's, if you're a promoter of the sport, and if you're thinking about promoting a pro show, it's got to be disconcerting to think that, okay, do I want to have a pro show, a men's open pro show,
right,
and go through the rigmarole of trying to promote it in a professional way? Because obviously the Vancouver Pro, this was Hardy's big win as an open guy when he was probably like 217. Yeah. That was a super deep class. But do I want to invest all my time, energy, and
money,
resources, money, to promote a show and then have 6 guys show up as opposed to 16 or 18 or
And it's like, as a promoter, you find yourself having to beg people to do shows.
Well, Dave, it'd be like you going to like putting a lot of legwork in to go to some trade show and working really hard and flying out there, and you set up your booth and you say, "There's only 200 people here. What happened? I thought there was supposed to be." And the guy promoting the thing did a great job, and he's downtown Chicago, and he says, "Geez, Dave, you know what? 5 years ago, we had 3,000 people here. We only have 30 today."
Do you think it's the onus or the responsibility of the promoter to entice top talent to come to this show? And the reason I say that is because if you remember, Tony Doherty, before he had the Arnold Australia there, every year would come to the Ironman or the Arnold usually, and he would try to recruit people to come to the Australia Grand Prix, which was like usually a week or two after the Arnold Classic. Yeah. And he would, offer to fly the top guys in, put them in hotels. Plus, he would give them food, and he would be like, "Look, you're going to be able to sell pictures and stuff like that, and make a lot of money, and you're going to get a trip to Australia." And he would entice these guys. He would get the top guys to come out there. He wouldn't have there wouldn't be 25 guys in the lineup, but he would have the top 5 or even the top 3 would be like high quality competitors: Lee Priest, Cormier, Vince Taylor. He always had like the top guys come out there. And everyone loved it because they actually did do well. They sold a lot of pictures and they had a good time and they were taken care of. Do you think it's the onus of like the promoters to say, "Hey, you know what? I'm holding a pro show. I got to make sure I get at least 2, 3, 4 guys that are really good. Maybe I'm going to offer to pay for their hotel, their flight. I'm going to give them, the ability to do a seminar, maybe and make some money. I don't know, whatever, schmoozing you can do with these guys." And would that be the right way? I mean, because I think as a promoter and you're promoting, you have to invest some money to get a return on your money, right?
Yeah, well, I think at this point, the answer is yes. At this point where open bodybuilding is, because it's not growing. Yeah. I don't know if it's dying. I wouldn't say it's dying. It's just not growing. If you compare it to classic physique, men's physique, wellness, the whole gambit, it is not growing. So if something's not growing, you have to put more steam into it. You have to put some more muscle behind it. And that might include calling up, early in the year, pros who are, have some name recognition and saying, "Dave, how'd you like to compete at my show?" "Well, listen, I'm not, Chris, I know you promoted the show, but I'm not interested in doing it. I'm planning to do this show." "Well, what if I, pay for your plane ticket and hotel?"
Right.
And, I'm sure the promoter doesn't want to get into that business of having to not only have the show, but pay for people to come in. But that's what was done at one point years and years ago. You had to pay for people to, fly them in sometimes and put them in hotels.
That's how you sell tickets to the show. Why is anyone going to go watch the show? If you have a good lineup, you're going to get a lot of people to watch the show. Yeah. It pays itself off. Yeah, it's part of the cost of doing business, as Bleckman would say. You got to spend some money to make some money. And so, if I'm a promoter, Steve Weinberg's got the New York Pro. It's got a name recognition and people know that Mannion's going to be there judging it, so people will do that show. But if I have a show, and I'm holding in, Tennessee and I'm going to do an open men's show, I better find out, I better get some guys there. I better call up Labrada and say, "Hey, what is it going to take to get you to do my show?" Yeah. I better call up, the popular, top pro guys that I know need to qualify. They need to do someone's show to qualify. So why not do my show? Now I have to just entice them enough to do my show by giving them the ability to either have their trip paid for or maybe even throwing them some money on the side to do maybe an appearance at a supplement store, get a sponsor. Most of these guys will do anything, if you throw them money and you show them respect. People just want to feel like, "Hey, I'm special." And I know as a bodybuilder, if a promoter called me up, and I had a lot of them do this over the years, and say, "Hey, you come out, I'm going to give you this. We're going to go here. You can make a bunch of money here. We're going to do a seminar. I'll give you all the money from the gate." And it always turned into good experiences. And then I had relationships, for years to come with those promoters. And that's called networking. And so I think these promoters can't just put it out there, "Hey, we're doing a pro show. who wants to show up, you gotta go after some top talent. And once you get some top names committing to your show, a lot of times you'll get other people doing the show too because they want to be there with that top talent. Hey, I want to compete against Ian Valliere, or hey, I want to compete against Antoine Vaillant. You know, I remember Kai used to tell me people would contact him because they wanted him in the show because when he posed at the night show, that was like having a guest poser there. I mean, people would come just to see Kai pose. So I think that the onus is on the promoter, and I think they do a better job in Europe doing that because the shows in Europe are like sold out, you know, and they have the top European talent will go to these shows, and they get it, you know, they get it. I mean, even you know, we break Beta Badai's balls, but you know, he gets it. By the way, did you see that new Oxygen gym that they were opening?
No, I didn't. I heard.
Oh my God!
Where, Dave?
I think it's in Kuwait. I saw Ahmad Ashkenani was doing like a tour of it. Hold on, let me see if I can pull this thing up. Unfortunately, he was speaking in Arabic.
English.
Hold on.
Well, I know someone who can translate, but he only speaks with an Egyptian dialect, Dave. Even though he's all the inside jokes, Dave.
That's hard. They're saying it's the biggest gym in the world. Let me pull this up here. It's the new Oxygen gym in Kuwait here. It's south of, I think it's south of the capital there. Hold on. Let me play this thing. You got to see this thing, Chris. You're going to be very impressed. It looks like a government building or something like that. It's so beautiful. Look, this is where they watch RX Muscle in here, Chris, when they're eating their food in the little cafe. They make food, the shakes. Look at this thing. It looks like a supermarket in there.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy.
Look at all that equipment. Rows and rows of cardio. I mean, it's like there's got to be like 100 pieces of cardio equipment in there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wait till you see the outside. You'll be more impressed when they show the outside of the building.
Yeah, I'll be more impressed with the rental rate, Dave. Unless he builds it.
Oh my God! Look at the screens. It makes our gyms here in the United States look like pieces of crap, you know.
Well, that hallway is the size of that hallway that he's walking.
You could
kind of like you could put a lot of equipment in there.
Yeah, look, they got pools and jacuzzis. It's gorgeous. It's like a spa. Look at this pool, Chris.
Dave, you missed it completely. I always say on this show that you would have loved.
Look at that building, Chris. Did you see the building it's in?
It's insane. Dave, what would have you liked more? I got a quiz for you.
Yeah.
2, 1. The choices are: what would you have enjoyed more? Working with Joe Eater 6 a.m. to midnight and being the #1 guy in command of Muscle and Fitness and Flex, or 92 to 96 living next to that gym. If you could transport your youth and your physique, and if Bader said, Dave, come stay in Kuwait, and you get to live next to that gym, and all your food is paid for, and your room and board is paid for, and you could just train there, what would be more enjoyable for you? I know what you're gonna say.
I hate to admit it, I would be living there. I would. I mean, I how could you say no to that? Almost, it's
Dave. See, the problem is, I know you too well. You picked the bodybuilding just to get huge over the career with Joe, the main guy in history.
It's a lot of work. Joe's a lot of work. The other one's way more entertaining.
And I would like to say, how big with no stress would you be training at that?
Crazy.
You would have been
eating 50 meals. You wouldn't have to worry about your drugs. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. It's all right there, you know.
You do a triple split, Dave. You would have invented Arnold did the double split with Coleman. You would have done the triple split, trained 3 times a day. If
Bader ever opened a place like that or in Florida, I would. You know how I always said I would never own a gym. Like I would go in cahoots with him. If he's gonna open something like that, I would be a participatory, owner of that gym. That's how. I mean that's like a crown jewel. That's like, I mean, like you have to be proud of that place. I mean, it's incredible.
let's think of a nickname for it. It's the what? It's the
They call it the world's biggest gym.
Taj Mahal of gyms.
Yes, it's the Taj Mahal of gyms. That's right. It's crazy. And I'm sure, they probably have a cleaning crew in there 24/7 cleaning too. It'd probably be immaculate, I'm sure.
Immaculate.
It's you know what? But that just goes to show you that in a country like Kuwait, that respects and likes bodybuilding, it's a they're going to spend money on that, because that means that people will go there. Regular people will go to that gym as well as Ahmad Ashkenani, and no one thinks anything of it. They think it's cool. Yeah. And I'm sure Ed Connors is looking at that gym. What would Ed Connors think of that gym, Chris?
Ask Beta what monthly membership is.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's crazy. The great thing is probably for the bodybuilders, it's probably free, I'm sure.
Of course.
Because the businessmen who have the money are the ones paying.
Well, Dave, if that gym was in Florida, not owned by Beta, they'd say, and you went in to get big, they'd say, keep the noise down.
Yeah.
Stop posing in the mirror. You're intimidating.
Dare I say, it's almost a waste of space, the gym. But they pack the equipment in there. Really, there's a lot of equipment in that gym. I didn't even know that many people worked out in Kuwait, but evidently they do. Nuts.
Yep. Obviously, they didn't build it for nothing.
Yeah. No. It's like everything. If you and I sat down and said, "Hey, what would be the dream gym? What would you want?" And I think that gym probably pretty much sums most of it up. I don't think there's anything they're missing there that I would say, "Oh, I wish they had." I hadn't seen the posing room, but I'm sure knowing Beta, there's definitely a posing room someplace.
Yeah, it used to be a football field, but they.
What would that building real estate wise be in New York City right there? It's like $20 million. No, more than that, probably $5 billion.
Yeah, think of it. It couldn't be in New York City. It would just cost too much to build.
Yeah.
The OSHA regulations would delay it 3 years. The code regulations, to have the code people come in and check every week would take 6 years.
Yeah, Beta probably opened it in 6 months. That thing.
Yeah. I wonder who actually makes the final decision on what equipment we are getting.
I don't know. I'm sure the bodybuilders have a lot of input on that.
Maybe they do like a game show. They have Askanani and Rolly's still there, I think, and all the crew who've been there over the years to decide on what equipment.
But a gym like that, I would go to all these equipment companies and I would make them bid for who wants to give me free equipment. Almost like the old Gold's Gym Venice. They used to get all free equipment from the latest companies just to use it as like a showroom floor, almost essentially.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll end the show today on a I don't know if it's a humorous note or if it's actually a scary note, or I'll let you comment on this. So I guess at a show, the Two Bros Pros in the UK, that they promote these shows, there was an athlete this past weekend who competed, who was I believe it's a biological male competing in the women's category here. I don't know how she did, but
how do you know?
Well, someone sent it to me, but it's the Two Bros Pros page it was on. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. There was only I don't know how many people. I think there was only 2 people in the class. There was a comparison photo of her. But what do you think about this?
Well, I don't want to jump the gun and sound like an idiot, because it might be. How do you know it's just not? It could. How do you know it's just not a biological female?
I don't know.
Well, that's why I don't want to open up my mouth.
Well, you know what the truth is, Chris? Even if it is a male, biological male competing as a woman because they choose to, I'm not against it. I got news for you. In our sport, I don't think there's any advantage to being a male or female in both directions. So if you have a biological woman who wants to compete with men, or a biological man who wants to compete with women, I'm all for it. I don't think there needs to be a separate division. I think that they should have let it. And if you could pass as a woman, or you could pass as a man, as vice versa, so be it. Who cares? We're just judging physiques. We're not judging no one's lifting weights. No one's sprinting. There's no athletic endeavor. It's a beauty contest. And if the beauty contest if you can pass the test and as a biological man look like a woman, I'm all for it. I don't care.
But not
I think the physiques are different enough in men versus women that it would be hard to kind of cross over. And I don't think I don't think we have a problem in our sport. I think we can let I don't think it matters what sex you are. Do you?
I do.
You do. Why?
Yeah. Because that just opens up the gate for other sports. Actually, that's the principle.
But we're not a sport. We're
then for God's sakes, if we're not a sport, then
no, we're not.
We're beauty pageant.
Yeah, we're a beauty pageant. Think about it. If you're a man and you get breast implants and you decide you want to be a woman and you can make yourself physically look like a woman.
I think you're saying that because you don't think that a man can come in and compete successfully against Linda Murray because he'll be too blocky in the hips and too masculine looking through the. Yeah.
Unless they did it, from when they were young, and but then again, if you're taking testosterone blockers when you're young, you're probably not going to have a lot of muscle.
We are going to come to that line in the sand sooner rather than later.
See, here's the problem, Chris. In bodybuilding, people take steroids. Okay, so as a man who wants to be a woman, the first thing they do is they block your testosterone, right? Because they don't want you to look like a man. So,
well, that's why I said,
how do you take steroids and not become masculinized? If you're a man, really biologically, it's a very tough transition to go over to. Maybe you might see some of the bikini girls, that were maybe transgenders, but it's going to be a crossover. I don't think it warrants having its own division. But as soon as I say that, Bob Ciccarello will be like, "Oh, we're going to have the trans division." Came up with this great idea last night.
I didn't. That's why I said I didn't even know. I didn't know when I saw that if that was just a masculine-looking biological female. Yeah. Could be one based on. I mean, I've seen more masculine-looking biological females competing in bodybuilding competitions, but Andrew Dice Clay's nephew is entering the men's physique division, and he's 100% man.
Oh, you're funny. I'll pull that up in a second. Hold on. Chris sends me the funniest stuff. But you know what? We really didn't. Hold on. We didn't. Before we go, we didn't really analyze. I wanted to get your opinion on Stanimal versus Hassan Mustafa. You've seen the pictures, right?
Yeah, Hassan looked very good there, and he's going to win.
You think he's going to win? Yeah, I think he's going to. You think it's a size thing at this point?
Yeah, it's like 70 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, it's a lot of muscle. Let's go through some of the pictures here. I got to say, Stan really brought his best, though. I don't think I've ever seen him look this good.
Stan has improved, and Stan looked very good, and Stan is great. And Stan's improving, and but Hassan looks like he's like, when people say he's twice as big.
Yeah. I noticed that Stan does a lot of his poses like Sean Roden did. I'm sure that's purposeful because they were obviously very tight.
Yeah.
But I think Hassan brought conditioning that we hadn't seen from him before, and he looks full. Yeah, I think Hassan's problem is that he tried to come in too big, and when he tries to come in too big, his shape looks terrible. Don't you agree?
There's a happy medium for him, and this is a good happy medium.
Yeah, very good happy medium, I think.
He's been big and quote too big, and he's been lean and like too small, and I think this is like the right combo of the size that he's known for, and his conditions. That look at those pecs. So that's a killer shot.
I zoomed in. I wanted you to look at his face. You see how lean his face is?
Oh yeah.
You could tell he suffered. That's the look of suffering. Yeah. When you have the hollow cheekbones like that, and because sometimes I see him on stage and his face is very full.
Yeah.
He suffered here. You can see he suffered.
For sure. Great delts. Great. That's a great shot.
Yeah, I think so too.
Great shot. Pecs, shoulders, triceps, shoulder arm tie-in.
This look, how does this do in the Olympia lineup?
Well, it gets some type of look, you know, because it's powerful with good condition, very good condition. You know, it's we'll have to wait and see what the lineup looks like, you know.
Do you recommend that he bring the same look to the Olympia stage?
Yeah, I think this is a really, really, really good look. I think the three shows, you know, that he's done this year, they were really good looks, and I think he was judged on his entire body, but with a little bit too much emphasis on the glutes and hams, I felt. You know.
So you're saying that you think he wasn't judged fairly? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know if he wasn't judged fairly because I wasn't there, but I just think that both of those shows. Here, I'll play devil's advocate. Hi, I had HASSAN Mustafa winning. Oh, glutes and hams, right? Next show. Geez, I thought, just my opinion. You know, I'm just not even being me, just someone in the audience talking to. I thought HASSAN could have won this show or should have won this show. Well, glutes and hams got to be tighter. So yeah. In other words, they weren't sloppy, and nobody said like, you know, side chest had to be better, side tricep had to be better, back double had to be better, front double had to be better, most muscular had to be better, had to be fuller, had to be tight. You know, they didn't even use the word tight or dry. They just said, well, you know, glutes and hams.
I looked at those pictures of him in these other shows. I didn't see the level of crispness that he has in this show.
It's better here for sure.
Now, we're looking at Instagram pictures. Probably have filters on them too. So I don't know. But I did see some posing video of him, and he looks pretty good too. So I think he definitely brought it down. And I always can tell by looking at a person's face. If the face looks like they've been starving, you know, for a week or two, that's a good sign that they're in shape usuable. I remember.
Okay, so go back to the previous picture, and I didn't want to speak up because I didn't know if it was a guy or a girl, and you said it was a biological girl who's now a guy. So
yeah,
judge on that face. So show the face.
that could be fillers in their face too, Chris.
Put the Andrew Dice Clay. So let's leave the show on the left.
All right, let me get the Andrew Dice Clay thing. Hold on. I
found it funny, but maybe that's because I have 4 kids and get exhausted easier and I laugh easier.
Hold on. I'm getting it.
And I want to say that I would like the listeners to chime in if, you know, this guy, Andrew Dice Clay's nephew, is doing men's physique, and if they are judging the legs here. So he thought they were judging he didn't know if they were judging the legs or not. And then there was controversy of like wearing jewelry on stage, and Andrew Dice's nephew thought that the women's bodybuilders, you know, that they allowed the jewelry to be worn. So he just came out, you know, in the prejudging with, you know, the necklace and the sunglasses and the hat, the watch.
Now, is this a transgender or is this a true male?
No, but Bob said, well, clearly, Steve, look at they're judging the legs here.
I think those shorts are a little too short, yeah.
His upper body could be a little bit tighter, but the legs, you can see, Dave, they're...
You remember Ronnie Coleman used to always come out with sunglasses when he would pose. I don't know why, but he used to like wear the sun. I came out. I did a routine where I actually I wore sunglasses very briefly. It was part of this James Bond routine I was doing on stage.
The one you did the splits.
Yeah, the one I did splits. And you know what? And I hated wearing them because, you know, if it's you could trip very easily on the stage. You know, there's oil and there's things that you might miss an obstacle. You can step off the stage by accident if you're too close to the front of the stage. There's stairs on the side of the stage, so you got to be very careful. So sunglasses are dangerous on stage because you really can't see that well. You really want to have a good line of sight when you're on a stage. Especially some of these stages are really small, like they're like little they almost set up these ballrooms where they'll put like a little podium. Yeah. And I remember back in the day, they would have these people would set up, you know, shows in these ballrooms, and they'd have the girls come out with the high heels, and high heels don't do well on carpeting because they get caught in the carpeting. And I would say there was at least 2 or 3 girls that would go down every single show. And I felt bad for them because it's got to be super embarrassing. Not to mention you could break your ankle, real easily. No. So even on the regular stage with oil, I mean, imagine that little high heels you're walking in with the little. I mean, there's no stability to those things whatsoever, and you're accident prone. Forget about it. Thank God I never had to wear high heels on stage. Forget it. I would have broken my ankle for sure.
I bet you didn't know that you have to, as a promoter, when you're promoting a show, you have to pay extra for the high heel premium on the insurance because there's greater risk there, Dave.
Is that true?
No, but if someone got hurt on high heel with oil, that's what would happen. The insurance company would say, sorry, we got to, the premium.
There'd be some lawsuits, definitely. People would sue. I can't even imagine what the indemnification insurance must be when you're promoting a show. There's got to be a lot of expenses for promoters. I should get a promoter on. I should get Gary Udit on one of these days. Talk about how much it costs to promote a show, because I think a lot of people probably would be shocked by some of the hidden costs, especially if you're dealing with unions or stuff like that.
The setup, the venue setup, breakdown.
They'll rape you sometimes. I remember I did a show actually in Vermont. I guess posted a show, and I think it was Rick Poston. Is that the guy who used to promote?
Oh, yeah, Rick Poston up there. Rick and Debbie.
They had
I sound like Hanson. They moved down to Tampa, Florida after years.
Oh, they did. Okay, they had a show at like this very fancy. It was like an old opera hall there. It was a gorgeous venue. I guess posted it, and the venue collected all the money, and because their people had to work the venue, and then they decided they were going to take some kind of a fee, and they were basically holding him hostage. He couldn't get any of the money from the gate, and he sold a lot of tickets. He promoted the show really, really well, and he sold a lot of tickets. And they were like, "Well, we're taking 20%." He's like, "What do you mean 20%? That wasn't in the." Oh, that's standard for the so and so opera house. We always take 20%, and he had no.
Love the unions, Dave. Gotta love the unions.
That's right. Even in Vermont. By the way, did your son leave for college?
That's the land of Bernie Sanders. So it's number one.
I know.
After unions comes socialism. So after we are unionized, comes to the left is we own. That's with right. You. They own the show with you. You promote the bodybuilding show, and they say, you know what, you did all the work and everything, but it's got to be split evenly 5 ways.
That's right. It's socialism. You gotta share the wealth. All right. Well, best of luck to the lineup at the Vancouver Pro. I'm sure by the time you're watching this video, the results will have been posted already. It looks pretty much like Hassan Mustafa is going to take home that title. Kudos to both Stan and Hassan for bringing tremendous package, as well as the other athletes who are in the lineup as well, and to the promoter, Vancouver Pro. Next year, maybe after me and you ranting and raving about how people should be doing more shows, maybe they'll get a better lineup next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've had great lineups up there, and it just maybe it's just an off year, but who knows?
Maybe they should offer the ability to stay at because it is a real destination place in the summer. Vancouver.
Vancouver's insane.
Maybe they should say, hey, you know what? For the top 3 or 4 guys they want to get there, we'll give you we'll get you your hotel paid for an extra 3 days after the show's over, so you can stay here on vacation or something like that. There's a lot of different ways to entice athletes to come up there and do that show. All you need is 2 or 3 big names, and you're good. Matter of fact, you know what? I would have, if I'm a promoter, I would have hired Kai Green to guest pose up there. Give him a free flight and a free hotel. Feed him for the week. And he'd come up there. Imagine if Kai Green guest posed at that show. How popular it'd be. I don't know why more people don't hire Kai Green. I'm sure he's available for guest posings. He did that one we talked about, right, overseas.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't want to pay his fee, but I think that he would be an attraction.
Maybe his fee is too high. Maybe we got to get Joel from the Old Species to come in and manage the guest.
I mean, think about it. How about get Kai to actually compete in the show? Maybe Kai would do a show like that because he knows he can win it easily, and and if you enticed him with enough, all you need is Kai. Hey, I'm having Kai Green compete in my show next year. Everyone and their mother will be at that show covering it.
Don't get going with the Kai because people go nuts, Dave. They've been saying trying to bring him back. Bring him back. You've been trying to bring him back for. He's not like Madonna. because Madonna, I think she's starting her tour. My sister was going up to Vancouver she saw Madonna, her and her girlfriends, like 35 years ago.
Wow.
And they were flying up to Vancouver. I don't know when, soonish it would have been, to see the Madonna concert. But Madonna, Madonna had I don't know what happened with Madonna. She ended up being hospitalized.
Yeah, she had some kind of something happened. She actually had a bacterial infection, probably similar to mine. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, they whacked her. The hospital sent her to the rehab like you, but they whacked her $4 million. They said Madonna's coming. Okay, price goes to $4 million.
The year I went away to college, the year before I went away to Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Madonna had made an appearance at a fraternity house singing with her band. This is in the 80s. This is before she was big. And they remember. These guys are telling me, like, Madonna was here and she was no one. She just was kind of like a hot, rock chick, that we up and coming, and they got her, booked her at the fraternity house, and she partied all night with them. And 2 years later, she's big time. So everyone starts somewhere,
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you for joining us as always, and as we say every week with Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.
good night, everyone. We'll see you again next week.